just 2 strokes off a tournament lead, but find out why we're talking about another Masters champ and questions about cheating. But first, the big move in the Big Apple Stage.
Yeah, you know, Knicks fans, it's been ugly in New York for years, right? Yeah, but last night's blowout loss to the Nuggets was another level of ugly, and now David Fizdale, he is out as head coach. That is our breaking news, first reported by Adrian Wojnarowski at 3:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Knicks owner James Dolan pulling the plug on Fizz just 18 months into his 4-year, $22 million contract. Last night, they actually made history, becoming the first Knicks team and just the 7th NBA team ever to lose back-to-back games by at least 35 points. They lost by 37 to Denver. Here's what the now former Knicks head coach said after the blowout loss last night.
We talked in Milwaukee about the way they played that night, 47 down, 43 down tonight. What does it mean to see it twice in a row?
It's sickening. And they'll have to rewatch it. Just like I'm going to watch it 3 or 4 times, they're going to have to suffer through it as well.
4-18, are you worried this is going to fall on you, ultimately?
I don't care about all of that. I don't even think about that, really. I think about the next team we're playing. I think about the guys in the locker room and how I can help them. At the end of the day, that's all I care about.
And now it's over. He will not be helping this team. His run is over. The 4-18 start, tied for the worst in franchise history. Fizdale ends his Knicks career with the worst winning percentage by a coach in team history at 202. Brian Windhorst now takes a deep dive into this latest failure by the franchise. Wojnarowski broke the story, joins us now live here on SportsCenter. And Woj, you reported that the Knicks had paved the way for Fizdale's firing back on November 11th, which was the day after Steve Mills, Scott Perry held that news conference. So how did they get to today's decision?
Well, the consistent losing, the 2 blowouts here at home, didn't even allow Fizdale to get on this Western Conference trip coming. But there is a culture at Madison Square Garden with the Knicks of scapegoating. Typically, it falls on the coach. And David Fizdale signed up to coach Kristaps Porzingis, have a chance in free agency to get some A-list free agents, and he has none of that. He has a roster that is built to be doing exactly what it's done, and that's get blown out on a regular basis in the NBA.
Yeah, so it almost doesn't matter who the head coach is based on the talent that they have to work with. So how aggressively, Woj, are the Knicks pursuing a permanent replacement versus maybe just riding on an interim for the rest of the season?
Well, I'm told that their assistant coach, Mike Miller, who had been with the Knicks G League team in the past, had some success there, is the likely interim coach. But here's going to be the question, Sage, for the Knicks organization. If they allow Steve Mills to go out and hire another coach while this season is going on, they're essentially committing to this front office structure going forward, and buying them more time to draft players, make deals, pick this coach, because you are not going to go big game hunting for a top-level basketball executive if you put in place another coach with a long-term deal during the season. I think the plan for the Knicks should be let an interim coach ride this out and then make some decisions about who is going to run basketball operations, who can lift the Knicks out of this disrepair.
That's the thing, and you mentioned Scott Perry's name and Steve Mills' name, and we've heard their names thrown around for many years now, Woj. Why do they still have a job? I mean, it starts at the top, right? What is Steve Mills and Scott Perry, what is their standing right now under James Dolan?
Well, James Dolan has shown tremendous loyalty and belief in Steve Mills, despite the fact that he has had virtually no success in over a decade in 2 different stints running, overseeing basketball operations with the Knicks. And if the Knicks are going to go out and get the elite kind of executive that would want to come work for the Knicks, despite all this, despite James Dolan, the Knicks could still attract one of the very best, most accomplished general managers, presidents in the league. But if Steve Mills is still there in place, as they've allowed him to step aside at different times, move over to business, come back, that's going to be really difficult to attract the kind of candidate that's needed to get the Knicks going and make them a representative organization.
Just think, it's only been a couple of months since people thought, hey, Zion Williamson coming. How about Kevin Durant? How about Kyrie Irving? What a difference a couple of months makes. And now David Fizdale out as head coach of the Knicks. With Woj breaking the news. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Are you surprised? How do you feel? I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm happy that Coach Fizz got out of this situation. I'm going to repeat it again. He was set up for failure. This roster was not put together right. Like I said, how many chances is Steve Mills and Scott Perry going to get? And right now they have to find an interim coach.
Right.
But far as looking into the future, far as next year and hiring the right coach, it's gonna be hard until they have to make an adjustment in the front office.
I want to show you guys what David Fizdale said just last night. The Knicks lost by 37 points. It was their 8th loss in a row, and Fizz obviously knew how bad this was. Take a listen.
It's sickening, and they'll have to rewatch it. Just like I'm gonna watch it 3 or 4 times, they're gonna have to suffer through it as well.
4-18. Are you worried this is going to fall on you ultimately?
I don't care about all of that. I don't even think about that really. I think about the next team we're playing. I think about the guys in the locker room and how I can help them. At the end of the day, that's all I care about.
Just in the last 15 years, and I say just because they've had the 2nd worst record in the NBA in that time, they have had Lenny Wilkins, Herb Williams, Larry Brown, Isaiah Thomas, Mike D'Antoni, Mike Woodson, Derek Fisher, Kurt Rambis, Jeff Hornacek, and now David Fizdale have revolved through that door.
Wow.
Ramona, who do you think we are getting next?
I think it's going to be somebody on that staff. From my understanding, with the Knicks right now, they're meeting right now with the staff, and they're deciding who the interim coach will be. The 2 names that I've heard so far, Mike Miller and Pat Sullivan, those are assistant coaches on the staff right now. I don't
Not
think
that Mike Miller.
Not that Mike Miller,
Right,
a different Mike
Mike
Miller. Okay, but it's not like they're doing. I know we're showing the typical Knicks coaching search candidates. Yeah. Okay, I don't think that's where their head is right now. They're looking at an interim situation, and I think they're meeting about it right now. But those are the 2 names.
So someone from the staff stepping in an interim role, I get that. Long term, though, we just showed guys like Mark Jackson, Jason Kidd, Ty Lue. Do you think that big name coaches who are maybe assistants or big names in other broadcasts will want this job?
Yeah, only if they change the front office. You have to make changes in the front office. Otherwise, you're not going to land a good coach. I don't care, or you're going to have to overpay him. But nobody's going to want this current situation with how they constructed this. I mean, it's a disaster.
Even the way this went down to me is just so curious. It didn't seem planned out with the big road trip they've got coming up and no plan for an interrupt. But it's the Knicks, so we'll tell you more on Monday. That the Knicks have fired David Fizdale. Perk, we were just talking about Fizz in the last segment. I guess the Knicks felt the situation was as dire as the people up at this table did. What is your reaction?
I'm so happy for Coach Fizdale. Yes, he finally he can go to bed at night. No more stress. Yes, but something needs to happen. He's not the only person that needs to be fired.
Keep going.
Scott
Say what
Perry.
you mean.
Oh, I'm gonna say it, Rachel. Scott Perry, Steve Mills. How long do they have? Like they've been running this for over a decade now. No success. Can't keep blaming the coaches now. Come on now. Something else got to shake. I'm happy for Fizdale in a good way. Now he can get away from
I don't think
situation.
they have decided who the interim coach is going to be. My feeling is that it was going in this direction.
Right.
And I don't think they wanted to do this soon. The question is whoever when you make this change, you want to have everything lined up and decide who the interim is going to be, and you want to tee them up for success. But when you lose by 37 at home and the way things have been going, it just felt close this morning, at least. And obviously it was.
I mean, look, and we don't know what precipitated this happening on this day. Obviously, Adrian and Malika Andrews reported a few weeks ago that Fizdale was sort of on the chopping block. But then he hung on for a little bit. And we've been looking at the schedule. I don't know if producer Steve has that somewhere. You can still throw it up. But they go on a tough West Coast road trip, right, next week. And there was a feeling, since he had lasted this long, that, hey, maybe they would let Fizz coach through the road trip because tough West Coast games, maybe you let Fizz take those L's if that's what's going to happen, and then you give the new coach a little bounce when they come back in. Maybe James Dolan got involved after that 37-point loss at home. Frank Isola reported that when Scott Perry and Steve Mills came out and gave that very unusual press conference after 10 games, that it was because James Dolan had been talking to them loudly about what had been happening during that game during halftime in the third quarter. So we know that they have an owner who has already shown this year that he is frustrated and that he is not hesitating to get back involved again. I think players around the league, Coach Fizdale has a lot of support, right? From LeBron and Dwayne Wade have talked very much about him. He's had support in some of the other places, even Memphis, where he was fired from also. But he and Marc Gasol, who had some issues, have buried the hatchet and have a good relationship now.
Right. But, I mean, he's a champion. Like, Fizz is a great coach. Just he has to be put in a good situation. But, you know, you just look at this whole situation is just wrong. He was set up for failure from the jump. And, you know, now he could just kind of go take a deep breath, enjoy his family, because I know he's been stressed out. Hey, Fizz, I'm supporting you, my brother.
I mean, look, and the question about who's going to replace him and what happens next. Woj also reporting that Keith Smart, his assistant, is out, so he's not going to take over. This is a team that has a lot of young players, but also a lot of soon-to-be free agents, if not at the end of this season, the end of next season, guys who are playing for contracts. The Knicks front office put these guys on short-term deals. They really put a collection at power forward, and there are guys who sort of maybe aren't all united in the same way. I'm not saying that they don't go out there and try to win. Those guys do go out there and try to win, but it is not necessarily set up as a recipe for team success. And there have been issues not only this season, not only with David Fizdale, before David Fizdale, before the coach before that, before the coach before that. If you look over the last 15 years, the Knicks have the second worst record in the league. If you look over the last 20 years, they have the worst record in the league.
Can I add one more thing? Majority of in any sports, right? The owners that have a lot to do with the program usually don't be successful, right? Check out the Cowboys, for example.
Kendrick is so sad today.
I'm bitter. But I'm saying most owners, the owners you hire these GMs, you let them do their jobs, right? The owners that are involved the most, that's the teams that don't have success. You look at the Spurs, a lot of people don't even know who the Spurs owners, obviously they're not having a good year, but I'm just talking about over the history. A lot of people in the world don't even know who the Spurs owner is.